Morning, everybody. Thought I'd share something with you based on a conversation I had recently with someone who was suffering from something very similar to what I was suffering from. And that is the stories that we have been telling ourselves for a long time that are actually holding us back. At some point in our lives, maybe someone told you something, or maybe you started believing something about yourself, that you're not good enough, that you don't fit in, that you're not up to par, that you're a good second rate, but you'll never be a first rate. And that often starts when we're young, but not always. But sometimes there's like the grain is that little seed is planted when we're young, and then throughout our lives, because that one particular incident can be very hurtful, every time something like that happens, it reminds us of that, and then it kind of blossoms into this real nasty thing, which becomes a belief. And that belief that we're either not good enough, too old, too young, too smart, not smart enough, like whatever it is likely the one thing that will be holding you back from getting what you really want out of life. And it's not that you won't have money or you won't have a good relationship, because I had all those things, and yet I still felt unfulfilled. I still felt empty, and I felt there was like a black cloud or like a weight resting on my chest. So I'll give you a little tip, and this may or may not work for you, but it absolutely worked for me. And that's that when you go back to that original trigger, and even maybe some of the other people along the way who said the same thing or corroborated with whatever nasty or negative belief you had about yourself, every time you get triggered by that, you feel hurt. You feel bitterness, you feel anger, you feel sadness, you feel a whole cornucopia of things. In order to let that go, in order to not be triggered again, in order to never feel like something's going to hurt you again, you have to switch that hurt into compassion. And that's not easy to do. The process that I went through is I went through all of the stories that I told myself, all of the judgments people made against me, all the people who made me feel like shit. And I looked at it and I'm like, how can I forgive this situation? How can I forgive these people? And sometimes it's really hard to do because they were deliberate. They knew what they were doing and they did it to hurt me. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Most often people do. But what I tried to think instead, I'm like, okay, how sad must their lives be to try to spread that much poison on other people? So I felt compassion towards some people who tried to make me feel scared, because I'm like, you know what? They tried to make me feel scared because they were scared. And maybe in some weird way, they thought that they were protecting me, right? People who tried to hurt my business, and that was really hurtful. It's people who were close to me. And I'm like, why would they do that? And when I look back, I could be one of two things. I could be angry and I could wreck that relationship. Or I can look at it and kind of go, you know what? They thought like the fear and what they were trying to make me be afraid of is actually what they were afraid of. But just because that's their baggage doesn't make it mine. And I can forgive them the nastiness or the poison that they tried to push on me because they were scared themselves and they don't know it, or they're not able to get rid of it. And so I felt compassion on them because it must really suck to live that way. And so now, whenever anything happens or anyone says something or the situation crops up that used to trigger me and used to be hurtful and make me cry or be angry or like a whole bunch of things, I don't feel that anymore. Instead, I'm like, oh, you're one of those? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you feel so bad that you feel like you have to push this out on me. And so what I have done is I've gone through systematically over probably the past year, I've really made it my business to try to become aware of when I'm triggered, because sometimes we don't know it until it happens. And then we've blown up sky high and we're like, that was a little bit more energetic than it probably should have been. And so you become aware of these triggers and then you start to kind of try to unravel them. And so the process I go through is like, what is the story that is being triggered, right? So what is the belief that is kind of cropping up in my head? And where does it come from, right? Where exactly did that trigger originate? Go back as far as you possibly can. There's lots of little mini triggers along the way, but it usually started somewhere. And you have to ask yourself, is there something or someone I can forgive? And sometimes it's ourselves. It's ourselves for reacting in a certain way or whatever. And you forgive that and you try to say, okay, how do I change hurt into compassion? How do I, not that you want to feel sorry for someone, but you want to think a little bit more kindly about them, as opposed to in an angry way. And then the big question you have to ask yourself is, how is your life different now that you feel this way? Instead of being hurt and angry or bitter and resentful, you're compassionate and you forgive. And it is one of the most freeing experiences I have ever gone through. And it is one of the hardest things I've had to do because my brain does not want me to forgive some of these people. It's like, why did you forgive that person? They were like really mean. It was rude and like it was crushing what some of these people did. And that's true, but I can choose whether I want to continue to be triggered by those things or not. Right? So, and when you start down that path of not allowing yourself to be triggered, you no longer see those things. So I finally learned the words reticular activation. And again, the best way of describing it is you buy a red car, suddenly everybody drives red cars. If you are always being triggered and reminded of what hurt you, your brain is now going to look for similar patterns. Oh, there it is again. There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. And you will snowball into despair. If, however, you stop that snowball and you don't allow that reticular activation of your brain to look for the hurtful parts, instead you look for ways of, for kindness or compassion, those kinds of things, your brain's like, oh, you want that information, and it will go out and it will seek out those kind of examples instead. Your entire world can really turn around. And I say this from experience. This is not some woo-woo thing, and everyone knows I'm not a woo-woo kind of person. But this is a strategy. It's all about your brain. And if you understand the way that your brain works, then you can actually start manipulating it or sending it information that you want more of and pulling out the information you don't want. So if you are, if someone has hurt you, if something happened to you that was really painful, and you keep getting re-triggered by it, it could be once a month, it could be once every 10 years, but it's no fun. There is a way for you to let go of it. So I hope if anyone out there has experienced this, I hope you found this helpful. If you want to hop on a call with me to talk about if you're struggling with the process, more than happy to do that. Just send me a DM and we'll hop on a call. All right. So I hope you guys have a fantastic Friday. I wish you all the best, and may all the hurtful things that have happened to your life slowly ebb away and never trigger you again. Bye, guys.